So today I wanted to go over a few movies that I've seen recently that I have yet to talk about on the channel. Those movies are going to be Megalopolis, The Wild Robot, and Never Let Go. I'm going to be giving a spoiler-free review for each of those movies, give a final score, and if I would recommend it or not. Timestamps are in the description if you just want to jump straight to the point. However, just as a quick update, I am no longer doing similar recommendations for the movie roundup videos. I'll still be giving similar recommendations in the standard single reviews and maybe even trilogies, I'm not sure yet, but for the roundup videos, whenever I'm talking about a bunch of movies at once, just to conserve time because obviously I'm doing my own notes, my own editing. All that could change in the future, but for right now, this is what it's going to be like. Alright, with all that being said, let's go ahead and get started with the first film, Megalopolis, directed by Francis Ford Coppola, starring Adam Driver, Natalie Emmanuel, and Giancarlo Esposito. Fuck that up, probably. So, Francis Ford Coppola, the legend behind the Godfather trilogy, Apocalypse Now, and so much more. He now returns to cinema off of a 13-year hiatus with his own self-funded $120 million movie. And yes, all that was self-funded. It came all from his pocket. This is clearly a passion project of his, and I like that. A filmmaker his age to have the run and the legacy he already established and to still have this sort of passion and ambition to want to create what he would deem his own magnum opus. Unfortunately, though, I did not like this movie. I do agree for the most part with the general consensus. A little overblown. This movie has been getting terrible reception. It fucking nuked at the box office, and the reviews have not been too kind either. Although I do think it's a bit overhated. Like, this is not the worst movie of the year. In fact, we actually do talk about the worst movie of the year later on in the video. So if you want to hear my take on a literal piece of shit movie, stick around. But yes, for the most part, this movie did not work for me. There were some things that I liked. There were some ideas I can appreciate, but overall, this was not the most enjoyable experience. And I can completely understand why audiences, mainstream audiences, would just walk out. Which many did. It is weird and ambitious, which there's nothing wrong with that. Those are not sins within themselves. The problem is the fact that it's to a degree to where the movie feels convoluted. The first act, although somewhat puzzling, it kept me at least engaged. I was with it for the ride. It wasn't until we got the musical number, again, no spoilers. Once we get to that scene, it sort of goes off the rails and just never gets back on the rails. The biggest barricade in this movie is the strange storytelling. It kind of pushes you away from getting too invested into the characters, into the world itself, which is unfortunate because the characters' motivations play a very big part in this movie. The movie just never lets you sink your teeth into the world comfortably. As you're trying to understand these characters, their dynamics, their goals, you're simultaneously trying to understand and get a grip on the world and the setting that this movie takes place in. But there's just so much happening all at once, where things are happening in a literal sense, in a metaphorical, artsy sense, and it gets to a point where it's jarring to keep up. I can appreciate some of the bold, imaginative elements of the movie, but the grip of the story just loosens up as it unfolds. You kind of just are wondering what the fuck is going on. This movie is a spectacle, but it doesn't feel like a style over substance type of movie. I believe Francis Ford Coppola made the exact project he wanted to make and told the story exactly how he wanted to tell it. And in some ways, it makes this movie difficult to review because it doesn't necessarily feel like a movie. It feels more like a stage play. A lot of the elements about this film are theatrical. The acting, the narrative structure, the dialogue. And like I said earlier, the strange storytelling overall, even though it is disorienting, I was captivated, again, like I said, up until the first act. Picking up on the themes and the messages of the movie and what it had to say about mankind and greed, and I was enjoying it, but it was doing too much at some points in terms of artistical expression, and then it wasn't doing enough in terms of trying to ground its story and its characters in a more, I guess, relatable sense, or just a sense that we could fully connect with. That's why I say this movie feels more like a spectacle. Now, this movie is obviously getting shitted on by most mainstream audiences, but a lot of the reviewers I've seen are talking about this in a sort of Showgirls or Star Wars prequel trilogy where it's not appreciated right now because it's so ahead of its time. Like 10 years down the line, 20 years down the line, this is going to be known as like a boundary-pushing classic. I feel like a lot of that has to do with the name, the fact that Francis Ford Coppola made this, because obviously, in his own right, he is, call me corny, a genius when it comes to cinema. But this is the difficult part when it comes to talking about unique art or just creativity in general. Like, are you a genius because you make something that gets shitted on and what people deem is bad, but then years down the line, everyone appreciates it for what it was, or even admit we just weren't with your mindset. Like, you were literally ahead of the ball. This has happened a lot in art and pop culture in general. Few examples: Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, Kanye West's Yeezus, and some would say the Star Wars prequel trilogy, but me, I haven't seen those movies in a few years, but last time I remember, they were still dog shit ass. Like, I don't care how bad the sequels are, they don't save that movie from its writing or its acting, but I digress. Either way, it's only time that'll tell if something is actually ahead of its time, and we could all look back and think, wow, that was actually really good, or, oh no, we're right, that's bad, it's still bad, and it always was bad. That's just more in a consensus sort of way, like what the culture deems artistic or not. As individuals, we obviously have our own opinions, whether you think The Shining is good or not, whether you think Yeezus has aged for the better or for the worse. Same with this, Megalopolis. Maybe I'll have a different opinion on it a few years down the road, let it sit, let it stir with me, but I think I'm pretty confident in the cons I have with this movie never becoming pros. There are things that I just can't connect with. The acting and the acting choices and the line reads, it bounces from good to how did that make the final cut. A lot of the VFX was distractingly bad, and again, the overall story is just super hard to connect and engage with. One of the GOATs, Francis Ford Coppola, he self-funded an experimental sci-fi epic. Props to that always. Although I can appreciate some ideas here and there, it's not enough for me to appreciate the experience as a whole. Again, maybe time will change my opinion, but for right now, I'm giving Megalopolis a 4 out of 10. I don't think I'd recommend this. Okay, so for the next movie I've seen and I want to talk about is going to be The Wild Robot, directed by Chris Sanders, starring Lupita Nyong'o and Pedro Pascal. This is the new DreamWorks movie. It is an animated film based off of a children's best-selling book based off the same name. And in regards to big budgeted animated Disney DreamWorks movies, this is definitely one of the most beautiful animated movies I've seen in years. In this movie, we follow a robot named Roz, played by Lupita, and she crash lands on an island, and as she explores the island, she meets this baby orphaned little baby goose, and she sort of develops this parental mother-like bond. So when I say beautiful, of course I am referring to the animation, and you're gonna hear that word a lot in this review, beautiful, but also the story itself is very heartfelt and touching. Spoiler alert, I love my mom. We have been through the good and the bad, and through that we have a very strong bond. So for me, it's super easy to tug on the emotional heartstrings when you're presenting a story that shows the vulnerability of a parent, especially a mother. The bond between a parent and a child, the love, the good and the bad, the struggles of growing up and watching them grow up. Unfortunately, the ignorance that a lot of us kids have to their mother's pain and all the suffering that they take to make sure that we're okay. So yeah, this movie is a tearjerker. Although I didn't cry, it definitely did its part in the emotional beats. I was invested in the story, I cared about these characters. There were several people in the theater crying. Again, not a sad movie, just a beautiful movie. The characters are funny, they're likable, they're charismatic, you give a shit about them. Pedro Pascal, sorry if I'm messing that name up. The Fox, he was the comic relief character, and he annoyed the fuck out of me at first. However, I did come around to be like, okay, alright, you're cool. I enjoyed all the characters. The voice acting that he did, especially Lupita. She is so good in this movie. I don't know if she's ever done voice acting before, but she killed it. There was no trace of her voice there. You couldn't hear her. She fully transformed into this robot. She sounded like a robot. Her voice was emotional and vulnerable when it needed to be. Her voice acting was top tier. All around, the cast is strong. But of course, the best part about this movie is the animation. I was hoping when Spider-Verse came out, it would show everybody like you can do different styles and still be fantastic and still appeal to a very wide audience. That somewhat happened, but unfortunately it seems like a lot of these new styles are just trying to copy or replicate the Spider-Verse type of animation. I'm not a historian on animated films, but it just seems recently there have been a few movies that are just trying to copy that style, and I don't want it to just be, hey, you can either look like Moana or you can look like the Spider-Verse movies. The Wild Robot doesn't look like neither. This animation style seems unique. Again, I don't know if it's legitimately one we've seen in a big movie already, but to my knowledge, I haven't seen a movie that looks like this. This feels like the new breath of fresh air in animated movies. Like, it's unique in its style, it's beautifully animated. It's got this colorful, vibrant, gorgeous look to it without mimicking other styles. There are so many scenes that are like mesmerizing. Butterflies flying, birds flying, you got scenes of fire. It just looks, again, I warned you, I'm gonna say this a lot, beautiful. The visuals alone gave me that sort of feeling I got when I was a kid watching Studio Ghibli films for the first time. And I'm gonna sound corny, but it captures this sort of magic you can get from an animated film. And I feel like in recent years that's been sort of missing, at least in the big budgeted animated movies. It's imaginative, it's funny, it's touching when it needs to be, but also the cinematography. You get these nice, big, snowy landscape shots, or these wide angles just showing off the lush, vibrant forest. Like, the movie feels immersive. Again, the story is great, but my favorite part are the visuals. It's a stunning movie. Overall, it is a fun, heartfelt adventure that I would probably recommend to everybody. With all that being said, I'm giving The Wild Robot a 7 out of 10. I would definitely recommend this. Alright, so now let's go ahead and talk about the last film, and that is Never Let Go. Directed by Alexander Aja, starring Halle Berry, Anthony B. Jenkins, and Percy Daggs IV. So, truth be told, I have not seen every single bad movie that came out this year. And when I say bad movie, I'm saying in quotations because I myself haven't seen them, so I can't judge if the movie actually is bad. I can't give my opinion on it. But it's more just the general consensus, the scores. I'll probably come around eventually to watch them just to see what all the hype is about, see if I could, get a quick laugh off them. That being said, this is the worst movie I have seen this year so far. I don't want to go too hard on this movie because that's just an asshole thing to do. But okay, where do you start? So this is a horror movie, and it's not scary at all. It's not scary in the slightest. The scary moments are laughably bad. It's almost baffling because every single step was just mishandled. The writing of the story, the acting, due to a lot of reasons, none of the horror works and the story is not captivating nor interesting at all. It's a giant waste of time, but the biggest problems I have with this movie, let's go into it. Every aspect of filmmaking failed, but the most apparent one is the acting. So when you have bad writing, it's already super difficult to pull off a great, convincing performance, even if you're a good actor doing a good job, because the source of the lines that you're reading, you're working with dog shit. Bad writing with bad acting, we're putting a magnifying glass on all the flaws and making them a million times more apparent. I say this because Never Let Go already has some of the worst dialogue written this year, but with that, the acting from all three leads is bad too. Halle Berry's okay in this. There are moments where her accent sounded like it was inconsistent, but other than that, she did her part. The other leads, the two boys, this could be a fault of the directing, we don't know, but they were not good. The acting was bad. The acting was really distracting. And I don't want to go too hard because they're literally children. Like, shout out you boys. I'm so proud that you're trying to pursue a career in Hollywood. At an age so young, you'll have definitely many more doors that are going to be open, many more opportunities. The problem when you have children working on a movie, besides the ethics of it, is the fact that they are children and they don't have a whole lot of life experience. Their brain is like the size of a shoe. So they're usually not that good at acting. This is why when you get a movie like The Shining or The Florida Project or season 1 of Stranger Things, it kind of just blows everybody's socks off because, wait a minute, if you're a child, you shouldn't be able to do that good at that age. A lot of acting, especially nowadays, requires a very naturalistic touch. It's not the 40s where everyone's kind of over dramatic, over expressive. You have to be realistic, and a lot of children can't pull that off because, again, like I said, a lack of life experience. So with that in mind, if you're gonna have kids be in a movie, you understand that it's hard to get a child performance that is convincing and fantastic. Choose the children that are able to do that. Because, again, I don't fault the boys. It's already a daunting job to do. But at the end of the day, you are making a movie, and bad acting, regardless of age, is gonna break your immersion even more than it already has been due to other factors such as shit writing, shit storytelling, shit horror scenes, shit horror sequences. The bad acting sticks out further. Even mainstream audiences can tell when an actor is doing a bad job. That is a bad thing. Now here's the craziest part. There's one or two scenes that require more emotion. Out of the entire movie, the boys did the best performances in those scenes when they required the most, on paper, highest level of acting. That surprises me. It's kind of like you're able to do half-court shots with your eyes closed, but then you struggle on making a layup because the mundane conversations that they have, 95% of the movie, those are the bad acting parts. If I had to guess, I'm assuming the management team, the hiring team, they were auditioning kids based off of those scenes alone. Like, okay, who can pull off the most in this specific scene? Because these specific scenes require the most expressions, the most range of acting, so to speak. Because the boys, for the most part, did decent in those scenes compared to literally everything else. Dude, I feel fucking terrible saying, I hope to God they're not watching. They're probably not watching this. I have a YouTube channel with less than 100 subs. I hope they're not watching this. But yes, overall, the acting and, like I said, everything else in this movie just falls fucking apart. This could just be a me thing because I work with kids, and although I love working with kids, it has kind of put a wound in my cinema enjoying experience because now it just sticks out like a sore thumb when I hear dialogue that is clearly written by an adult for a child. There are so many movies, so many TV shows that just cannot get children dialogue correct. I don't give a shit where your story takes place, what setting, what universe. There are some things that a child just won't say, they won't have the cadence for, and they don't get that. They don't get that. And it's so immersion breaking and so like it's uncanny. If I shined a flashlight in a little 12-year-old girl's face, she's not gonna say, "Hey, would you mind putting that down for a second?" She's not gonna say that. It's so no, that's LA. LA is talking. Hollywood is talking. It may seem like I'm overreacting, but if you watch the movie, there are just so many moments you just know a child's not saying this. Someone who can't write for shit wrote that and had this poor child say that on camera. The story is incredibly boring. There was a fucking guy snoring in the theater. Honestly, that was my favorite part of the movie, hearing him snoring. Okay, well, hold on. I will say, the one aspect I enjoyed, I thought the score was pretty good. There's one song that they use, I think twice in the movie, where I was like, okay, I'm gonna put this on my Spotify. That's it. So thank you to Never Let Go for one song. Cringe line reads, cringe acting from all parties for the most part. An underwhelming, uninteresting, stupid story. The monsters in this movie are just people with veins that flick their tongue rapidly on some freak shit. It's not freaky shit in the sense of, oh my god, I'm uncomfortable, this is weird. It's freaky shit and like, okay, why is he doing that? It sucks because I hate talking so negative about movies, but when it's dog shit, it's dog shit. And especially when there's kids involved, like, oh, why are they in this? Well, like I said, again, I have not seen every bad movie, but I've seen this one, and it's the worst movie I've seen this year. I'm giving Never Let Go a 1 out of 10. I would not recommend this, not even as a so bad it's funny movie. It's just a waste of time. Thank you to everybody who stayed around and watched. I will be working on my Joker review. I know everybody already has their opinion on Joker, but I'm going to be doing Joker 2 and the original Joker in one video. Expect that this week. Today I'm going to be seeing the new anime film Look Back, which is an adaptation of Fujimoto's manga. So I'm excited for that because I'm a fan of Fujimoto. So yeah, expect the reviews on Look Back, on Joker 1 and 2, and probably a horror movie roundup because I've seen a lot of the horror movies that came out this year. So be on the lookout for that, but not anytime soon. Maybe in like the next 2-3 weeks because I know Terrifier 3 is about to come out, and Smile Part 2, so I want to go ahead and at least watch those before I make the list. And obviously when those come out, expect a review on those as well. Alright, with all that being said, again, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you at the next one.